This Hangout is live. Hello, welcome. This is the Great Public Schools Network, or the GPS Network's first Google Hangout. It's on to tweet or not to tweet. My name is Peter Moran. I'm a technology coordinator / classroom teacher from Frenchtown, New Jersey. And with us today we have Brandy Bixler, a technology coach from Denver, Sharon Davidson, a kindergarten teacher from Vermont, and Barbara Frank is a NEA online technology director for online education. Renee from California was supposed to be with us, but she's having emergency surgery and didn't really want to have be under anesthesia and try to do this hangout. It would have drove up viewership for our YouTube video later, but that's probably not the best way to get viewers. And I just want to get started. First of all, we're all GPS facilitators, and the NEA is taking on this amazing undertaking of trying to bring people, teachers together to find out what's next in technology education. And in doing that, they want the audience not just to be teachers that are a part of the NEA. They want parents, they want teachers, they want administrators, everybody coming together and find out what to do next. It's just at the infancy stage, and to make this even better is to have a hangout like this and have people involved that are asking questions on trying to find out what is next, and to make it the #1 resource for all the people that we just said. Today you can participate in a couple different ways. There's a question and answer on the right-hand side that you can put in that. Also, we have Brandy's going to show you now a slide that has the couple ways you can do it. And one is, it's called raise your hand. Raise your hand for education, and that's what we're doing right now, is raising our hand. And it's a hashtag GPS Network, or at NEA GPS Network. And the link that you see on the bottom is a tiny URL. We started a resource document. So if there's anyone on here, and I'm sure some people, if you're not, just go to tiny URL and you put in those, type it in just like that, and you can add your own resources. So you can add it and make it better for help us to help everyone else with stuff that you might have for ideas for technology or integrating technology. One of the main points that all of us love about that the NEA is doing this undertaking is just what we're doing right now. It's the online collaboration. It's the collaboration of teachers and students and parents and administrators coming together and seeing what's coming down the pike and seeing how you can make it better for everyone and make our schools the #1 schools in not just the state or the country, but in the world, on finding out how to integrate technology into education. With that being said, I'm going to get a start. Like I said, my name is Pete Moran. Brandy from Colorado is going to introduce herself, tell a little bit about her, and then we'll go right down. So Brandy,
all right, hi.
You can. I think
Hi,
you got to
I'm
click
Brandy.
off the.
You can't see me?
Yeah, we got you.
You're good. Okay, now you got me. It just took a minute. All right. You can see me.
Yes.
All right, so I'm Brandy from Aurora Public Schools, and as Pete said, I work as an educational instructional coach in ed tech. And so basically I just kind of help teachers integrate technology into their classrooms. And I use Twitter mostly for hashtags to drive traffic to my classroom blog. I use it to drive traffic to my Pinterest pages. And I use it for news updates and professional learning. So I'll share with you some of the ways I do that. NEA GPS Network, I'm a facilitator for them, and I really enjoy the virtual events that we're just learning to do right now and trying out. And there's collaborative groups. Each of us has our own collaborative group, and you can even start your own collaborative group. And the best part, I think, are the educational resources. So there's lesson plans posted. There's each GPS group has a resource page where you can add, or the facilitator adds resources. So you need to check it out on our shared document. That's the tiny URL document. The very first resource is the GPS network link. So if you want to click on that and check it out, you'll know what we're talking about. Part of the form, just let us know who you are, why you're here, and any questions you have, and that will help us customize as we go along to meet your needs. So thanks. So Sharon?
All right, awesome. Thanks, Brandy. So my name is Sharon Davison. I have the pleasure of teaching kindergarten in the state of Vermont. I'm really, really happy to be here today with Brandy and Peter and Barbara. This is a really, as Peter said, a really great opportunity for all educators to find a place where they can connect and collaborate and inspire each other through the NEA GPS network. I am also a facilitator of 2 online groups for the NEA. I look forward to hopefully those of you out there today thinking about joining, if not my group, maybe one of the other groups that are listed on the site. I use Twitter professionally for my own growth, and I also use Twitter with my kindergarten students. Twitter has been an invaluable resource and a way for me to have some outstanding professional development when I need it. So I look forward to sharing later on in our Hangout. Thanks.
Okay, we're going to start off by talking about how everybody uses Twitter, or what's the main uses that the teachers do. And for me, I'm more, I guess I don't know how else to say it, of a Twitter stalker. I find the best educational people that are out there that are doing different things, whether it's Bill Gates or Diane Ravitch, or some of the people that are really making gigantic initiatives in education, and I follow them. And one of the most powerful things that I saw happening was about 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago, through just this Google Hangout. NASA had you could bring the classrooms together and talk to watch them do experiments live. So we had my school and another school district brought together the classrooms, and we're watching the International Space Station conduct experiments, and then halfway through it, they popped up a Twitter hashtag, and they said, if you have direct questions to ask now, you can do it. And I just learning or just started to use Twitter. We got an iPad and we started to do it, and you just saw it lit up. There was 8,000 classrooms around the country or around the world doing it, and you absolutely saw the power of someone that's out in space and classrooms are connecting live right there. And to me, that was my first Twitter stalker experience. That was just showed the power of it, and it really impressed me. How about you, Brandy? What was your reason that you went to Twitter?
Well, for me, the first reason I went to Twitter was I had a blog that I wrote about how teachers are integrating technology, and I have a lot of resources for teachers to use technology, and I really wanted to expand my readership of my blog and my followers. So I started, just when I post a new post, using hashtags to post out my blog, and I have a bunch of Pinterest pages that I put a lot of resources on, and I wanted to get more people to see what I'm putting out there, so I used hashtags for that, and I just turned on the automatic Twitter share button on Weebly and on Pinterest, and it really increased the traffic to my blog and to my Pinterest page. And then I started to use Twitter. There were some bad fires in Colorado, so I started to use Twitter to follow the news on the fires, or traffic news, and then I started to follow it professionally. So professionally kind of followed all of the other stuff. And so now I use it to follow some of the people that I admire in education and who share really great resources. And if you go to the shared doc, I've listed a bunch of those, and I might talk more about those later.
Great. Thanks, Brandy. So I first heard about Twitter thanks to our educational technologist, Bonnie Birdsall, at our school. She asked me if I was interested in tweeting, and I really had no idea what it was. And then once I got on Twitter professionally, I had connected with a kindergarten teacher in Texas named Miss Ralston, and she is someone worth following if you are on Twitter. And she helped open up the idea of tweeting with students to me. So we began sharing resources and connecting through Skype and collaborating our classes in common themes that we were learning about. For me professionally, Twitter has helped me connect with other people who have been, blogging for a really, really long time, who have helped showed an interest in a lot of the things that I've been discovering in my classroom, as well as supporting me and challenging my thinking. I think Twitter has also been a nice place for me to network with other professionals, and it has really opened up my eyes in terms of this whole idea of audience and the importance of perspective, and how we can be connected globally so easily, and how we all have so much to contribute and share. And I think Twitter is probably the best form of professional development I've ever had. Again, there are people out there who are very passionate educators who want to share and connect, and I think it's through that sharing and connecting that we all get inspired about our work. So I think Twitter's awesome. It might be interesting to hear about maybe Brandy or Peter to talk a little bit about any applications of Twitter that you guys have had in terms of either for yourself professionally or your work with students.
Okay, and like I said, the first experience that I had with the students is I had them using the Twitter account with the NASA International Space Station, and then since then we've done it where it was Earth Echo, their water and water environmentally concerned nonprofit organization, and we did hang out with them. But then they also followed Jacques Cousteau's grandson is Philip Cousteau, who heads up the network. We followed him. We started. You go to the Smithsonian or the Natural History Museum in New York City. They have some great stuff that's going on all the time, and that's how I've been following. Following is like people that are doing, whether it's the Constitution Center down in Philadelphia or a museum in New York City. You find out what they're doing, and it's instantaneous results, which is really makes it important for the students. How about you, Brandy?
So as far as with students, I work a lot with teachers, but I can share some things I've seen teachers do with students that have been fantastic. One of the things that I really like are the 6-word stories. I don't know if you guys have seen those or not, but you can actually follow 6-word stories on Twitter. And it's just these incredible stories that tell like a lifetime in 6 words or less. And it's a great project to do with your kids. And they can read other 6-word stories and post their own 6-word stories. Another thing that I've seen teachers do is the teacher creates a fictional character like Abraham Lincoln. And then, somebody from the class posts each day, something that Abraham Lincoln might say to his wife, or just doing that fictional character tweets back and forth. Another application I've seen are that it's probably my favorite is using Twitter as a back channel, and we're kind of doing that today on Twitter. If you go to the hashtag GPS network, and you can assign 1 or 2 kids, in your classroom, even if you only have a couple devices, to take notes for the day. So if you're learning about volcanoes, you can have 1 or 2 kids on a computer or a phone, whatever you want. You can have more kids. just kind of taking the notes, and then if kids are absent or they need to go back and review, they can go back to that hashtag forever and look and see what was done that day in class. So those are my favorite applications to use with students.
That's really great. So in kindergarten, this is my, I think, third or fourth year using it with my class, and we leave Twitter on all day long. And we start right on the first day of kindergarten, and I have to start new every year because every year I have a new classroom of 5- and 6-year-olds. What I do is I've written a guide for parents prior coming to kindergarten with just kind of an overview about all the different technologies I use, why I use them, and examples. And in there is a whole little piece about Twitter. My other idea that I have tried with parents that works really well is I also use Google Forms as a way to get their permission ahead of time to use social media. That means tweeting pictures of their child and also other things that we're learning about. Then I also invite parents to come as well and join Twitter. And if they're not on Twitter, they can still follow the live feed. And then this way, what happens is parents begin to see how we're using Twitter and what kinds of things are we tweeting. The first 3 weeks of school, in the Google form I send out, I invite parents who are on Twitter to go ahead and sign up to tweet us at different times throughout the day. The reason that I do this is because I want to begin modeling explicitly how I'm using social media to help model how my kids are learning to be safe, kind, and responsible digital citizens. And this works really well. So then I have opportunities with my students when we check the Twitter feed. They're starting off with familiar adults that they know. So they can say, oh yeah, that's my mom, and they'll say things like, I give them questions ahead of time, like just to inquire, like, what are you doing in kindergarten today? And again, I think as a teacher of young children, I have endless opportunities to really begin modeling how to use social media, how to use this platform to help children, not only children, my students, but their families as well, to see how this can be used to help develop rich conversations and connections with other people. I also, this past year, there was a woman in Vermont who came to one of my sessions at Vermont Fest and was inspired and started using Twitter. So we set up a Skype conversation with my students and her first grade students, and her students had questions specifically for my kindergarten students about Twitter. So again, this kind of evolved into another opportunity where young children had a chance to actually be mentors to older students about how they use Twitter and how it enhances their learning. One of the things I will say for younger students, tweeting with younger students, that I have found really most successful is we follow other kindergarten classrooms. Parents can follow us, but we will not follow them back. I'm very clear about not having any kind of names or anything with their photographs. I don't use children's names when we're tweeting. I do also on my professional account, I will follow other classrooms there as well, but my account for students, I just use kindergarten classrooms. Because again, when using social media, I'm trying to really help establish and model with my students and their parents about how social media can be used to help develop their own learning community with other people in a safe, kind way. And it's always in regards to learning. So that's just a couple of things that I do with Twitter. As I'm listening to Peter and Brandy too, the other thing I was thinking about is I'm wondering if, Pete, you could start too maybe sharing some of the learning opportunities and things that came from your description about how you use Twitter with your class in terms of Nassau and what you did, because that sounds really very intriguing to me. The students must have been very excited to be able to connect with real people who were doing things that you were studying.
And, now you said that, Sharon, there was, I guess, we had 2 or 3 different classrooms together, and it just shows the difference between the students and the teachers. The teachers were almost in their seats, jumping up and down that we're actually talking to astronauts, and the students almost looked like they expected it. There was one or two of them that really did it, but like the teachers were in the back of the room going, "I can't believe this is actually working," because no one even thought of it, 5 years ago, let alone 10 or 20 years ago. But the one thing that struck me when you were talking was some schools are starting to have a Twitter account on their web page. So I have a parent of 2 students that are 15 and 17, and our school sends out so many emails to the teachers. You get them from the PTO. You get so many things that you miss a lot of stuff. But a couple schools in New Jersey are starting to use the Twitter account as their means of communication. So they can just go right online, and if it's like, do you remember the concert tonight? And then people are like talking about the concert for tonight, and it keeps them up to date, so they're not going through their email or checking something. It's just an active online means of communication that keeps the school going. And I'm trying to get the school to look at it that way is my next biggest step, is trying to make my district think that it's there's more benefits than there is downside. And like anything, there's downsides to everything. Have you guys experienced any downsides in using Twitter? Because it's some people like ourselves really like it, but you might have some issues where you might not want it to use Twitter. Brandy, did you have any issues at all when you're doing it yet?
No. The only thing for me that can be an issue with Twitter is it can be a bit overwhelming when you get all these feeds, management tools, I think, come in, and they've really helped me, sort through what I want instead of just reading a long list of everything. But it's with any social networking. You have to teach the people who are going to use it to be good citizens with it, and to think before they post and understand that it's not going to go away and that anybody can see it.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point too, Brandy, about that whole idea. I know at our school we do a lot of focus. We have 3 simple rules: be safe, be kind, and be responsible. So that is so easy for me as a kindergarten teacher, because I can apply that to everything that we do virtually, whether it's face-to-face, inside as well as outside of our classroom, which is really, really important. And even with young students, I think it's important also, and also older students, I imagine as well, like the example that Peter shared, is to be very explicit in regards to how you're using social media, how it's supporting learning for your classroom, for your students, and how it's enriching it. And I was just thinking about, Peter, the way you were describing your students and their responses about, how excited they were. I mean, I'm sure they were. And I see that in kindergarten too. So I feel like, when we're using this tool, as long as it is in regards to what we're learning and we're excited about it, I think our students are also. One of the little silly things that I do in kindergarten is I use this little bird that I found at Target. It was like $1. And when I first started tweeting with kids, I know it's like this little stuffed bird, but the kids love it. Anyway, so when I first started tweeting the first day of kindergarten, I can't just say, okay, we're on Twitter, we're going to start tweeting, and my students are going to go, what are we doing? So I take out this little bird, and I also use it along with a book. So what I tell the kids is that when we're reading a story together, we're right here face to face. We can have conversations about what we enjoyed about the story. But if we want to share our ideas about the story with other classrooms, they're not here. Like, some live all the way across the ocean, some are in another building, and so when we want to share our stories, we tweet them. And I said that's, when I use this little bird, and I say, so we know that birds, what do birds do? And the kids will say chirp or tweet, or they'll actually make sounds of birds. And I'll say, and again, tying that back into, yes, this is how birds communicate. So they have their own language. And when we're on Twitter, we tweet. And this is how we share our ideas about things also. And when we do, we always have a topic, like you see in this book. If I'm reading a book about caterpillars, there's a topic. And we always respond to something that we've read or something that's resonated with us in the book that we think other people might find interesting. Eventually, the leader of the day is the one who has the bird, and they pass it out to people who raise their hands who want to tweet, and I type the tweet, and then that child, whoever is tweeting, will go up and interact with the smartboard. Because again, I'm trying to kind of make those connections with, once you share that, your idea through oral conversation, that oral language, then we tweet it and we put it out there for the whole world to see. And it's really, really amazing to see how this unfolds for young children. So then even after the first month of school, they don't really need the bird anymore, but we're using these little paper icons of little Twitter birds. So they're just in a pile by the computer. So children just do this all on their own. When they have a tweet, we share it, we tweet it, and they go and get a little paper bird, and then they take it home and they share it with their families. And then the conversation begins. The parents ask, what is this blue paper bird? And they say, oh, I was tweeting today in kindergarten. And then there's another opportunity for parents to engage and have a face-to-face conversation with their child about something that they're learning about. And there's so much excitement and genuine curiosity. I think what I find with young kids is that they are really, really inspired by other people commenting and interacting with them. Or, oh, we read that book too. And I think that is what gets my students excited. It's not like they're on Twitter all day long, but we do leave it up because eventually, as part of the classroom culture, it becomes a part of what we're doing. It's not a distraction. And I think probably for Peter and Brandy, for the ages that you all work with, think about if you get these students and they're used to that, how fluid it would be for you guys too in regards to working with them in their learning projects.
And that sounds like you're using that in some great ways, and hopefully it'll be a great model for other classrooms at that level to be using it. And I think the comfort level, like I'm a technology teacher that goes from pre-K to 8th grade, and the best learning that I see each year is from the kindergarten and the pre-K students, where they can come in the classroom and they're uninhibited at all. Like they'll go right to the computers and they kind of say, why not? Why can't this program work for me? And you see them be less adventurous when you get to 7th and 8th grade. They're saying it doesn't work for me, so I don't want to try it anymore. But the younger kids, it's just amazing on how they're doing it. And you do see with the middle school and the older kids, we're a Google Apps for Education school, so there's a lot of collaborative sharing documents within our school, and the level of concern that students have now, because they're sharing it sometimes with students in their classroom, sometimes from 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, they might have middle school projects. They start to put a lot more effort into it on spelling things correctly and looking it up and making the correct documentation on where they got their information from. So when you're having it even with Twitter beyond your school district and beyond your state or our country even, all of a sudden their concern of how they look matters. It's like, it's
right.
They want to see themselves as putting their best foot forward.
I think that's really true, Pete, and I think then that also becomes motivational for students as well, because they're beginning to develop a sense of audience, and through that audience they're going to have a variety of perspectives, and it's great that that matters to them. I know working with young students, I do all the typing. I don't abbreviate things. I type them up. I use, capital letters and periods and things like that, because again, I'm also modeling, those early stages of writing as well. And I think as kids get older and they are using Twitter more, that would be another place that, if it's important to them, they want to make sure, as you said, when they're sharing something about themselves, they want it to look a certain way. And that's great. That's great.
How about you, Brandy? Are you having any other uses? Like you mentioned management of your Twitter accounts. What are some of the management tools that you're using, Brandy?
Right now, I've been using what's it called, Fontana for Twitter, or Twitter Fontana, and I like it because it makes a slideshow of the tweets. Also, if I'm on my iPad, I really like Flipboard. If nobody's downloaded the Flipboard app, highly recommend it. It turns your
My
Twitter
favorite.
and your Facebook and your blogs into magazines that you can just browse through. Is TweetDeck, and I like TweetDeck when I have more than one thing I want to be paying attention to, because you can make columns for each of your hashtags or searches and sort and organize information that way. So those are kind of my three favorite management tools.
You mentioned Flipboard, Brandy. That's the number one free download on the iPad, and
Is it?
it's amazing. Like it's just to me one of the best things. Like I go through Flipboard to start my day, and my wife gets annoyed with me because I have like 3 or 4 different technology things, and you read it and you think it's cool, so then you bring it up, but I realize I can't bring up every article that I think is interesting. So, but it's amazing how it keeps you up to date on what's going on in technology, and sometimes you get to see with Flipboard, the different magazines, how they're skewing the articles, and it just makes you a more educated consumer.
One of the things that I've tried using, I haven't been really successful with yet, but it is pretty impressive, is Hootsuite. I don't know, Peter or Brandy, if either of you have used that. One of the things that I like about it is that you can have different streams of groups that you follow actually in the suite itself. So that makes it really easy just to kind of see all the groups, or the groups that you're most interested in following. Because Brandy made a really good point earlier about Twitter sometimes can be overwhelming with all of the constant feed that you get. So I know visually Hootsuite kind of helps a little bit with that. So you can put whatever streams you want in your suite, and then that way it's not quite so overwhelming. But I'm still playing around with it. One of the other things that I was thinking about as we were talking, sorry, Brandy.
No, go.
Was I was thinking about parent involvement. I would be curious, Peter and Brandy, to hear about any kind of endeavors that you guys have had in terms of being successful with raising awareness for parents in terms of Twitter as a tool to use in regards to learning.
Well,
I know that
one thing. Go ahead, Brandy.
I know that several of the schools I work with use the Twitter account, and they tweet out school events for the school, and that seems to work pretty good for parents. Go ahead.
I was with the parents. We do a lot of digital citizenship and with students and parents, but we never specifically geared it towards Twitter. But for me personally, like one of the goals I have for next year is to try to make it that our school has a Twitter account that's more actively putting out the events like this. So making an awareness on back to school night and trying to get an input, a buy-in from the administration and like the PTO. Is this something that we want to do? Because I think the upside is much more than the downside of using it.
Yeah, I do too, and I think it's really quick. That's the other thing. I find even from parents sometimes they don't always read email, but if they can just go to Twitter or our school Facebook page, sometimes there's a lot of information there already for them because people are really busy. So it is nice, I think, in terms of using as a school for announcements or even for teachers. I know I've done this. Don't forget the open house tomorrow, that kind of thing. And that works as long as those, you have everybody on Twitter or who can check it also. I was also sitting here thinking about, what are some creative ways, or how can we help share kind of Twitter, how we're using it too, with those families that are not connected as well with the internet. I don't know what it's like in Brandy in your school, or Peter, your school. Do you find most parents have access outside of school and are connected?
Yeah, Sharon, we kind of do like an informal survey at the end of the year, and I have to say it's getting up to be about almost 90 to 95% of the students
Wow.
Have some kind of internet access, and it's having accounts with I think with mobile devices. There's 7 billion people on the planet. There's in 2014, there's over 10 billion mobile devices. So there's more devices that are connected to the internet than there are people in the world. And by 2015, it should be almost 2 to 1. And it's like, so it's being connected is even in the most remote spots in the world, it's becoming more and more. And that's why Twitter is a big deal. How about you, Brandy? Are you how's the connectivity at your school?
We don't have that high of a rate of people who are connected, but again, it's the phones that are kind of the game changer. So I bet we're up to about 60% now of people who have a data plan and a phone, and the students, I would say it's 60% too. So someone in the family usually can get to something somewhere, but if they have an Instagram or Facebook page, they can get to Twitter, right?
That's true.
Yeah. Yeah. I've also been thinking, as we've been talking here this afternoon, a little bit about the power of Twitter that it has in terms of helping us develop rich resources and rich connections with other people who have maybe challenged our thinking or who have inspired us to try things that we hadn't thought of. I don't know if either of you have anything that comes to your mind that you might want to share in regards to that. A story or something about that happened on Twitter that just made you realize, oh, this is something I need to do.
Well, the one, like I said, I don't use Twitter that often.
But you are now, though, right, Peter?
I have to say I'm using it more and more. But the one thing that I did do is I was home with the Oscar night with that the most tweeted picture ever. I was part of that group when I was sitting there, and they said, here's the thing. And then I sent it to a couple people, and it was it's neat to be part of it. And I don't know where all of you stand with following the World Cup, but I was at the Bethlehem Steel Stacks where there's 8,000 people watching the World Cup. Almost beat Portugal yesterday, and I thought about trying to see what was the Twitter handle to how many people were sending stuff out, because I was amazed. I'm a family that was brought up on soccer, and for me this World Cup, it's just exploded, like people stopping everywhere just to watch the World Cup, and it's neat to see the U.S. doing phenomenally well.
Yeah, and I think that's a great example about for someone like me who would never be, not travel to go see it, but yet I can be a part of that experience. I think, that's a great example of how Twitter can help us be connected and at least get a sense for, what that experience might be like. I was thinking, I'm at the other end of my teaching. I'm not like a brand new teacher, but using Twitter for me, even learning how to log on and log off and how to manage your settings and things like that, it was a huge deal. But once I, explicitly understood how all that worked, if I had a question, I found myself just tweeting out questions to people who were part of my professional learning network. And I have to say, I was so overwhelmed and very, very touched by the number of people who reached out to say, have you tried this? Go here for Twitter support. Go here. So one of the other things that I really enjoy about Twitter is that people that are in your PLN are there all the time. I do follow a lot of people. I have a lot of people that follow me, and it's not that I have to tweet with them every day, but just knowing that they're there, they're part of this larger learning community, and if I have a question, I can tweet it out, and whoever feels they're able to help or offer some support, I think it's really great. People just kind of do that automatically, and I think about the flexibility in Twitter, just using it that way as a professional learning network. It's really an endless, endless place to go for support. And I appreciate also when I first wrote an article for ISTE, the International Society for Technology Learning magazine, about blogging a few years ago. And I was on Twitter one day, and there was a gentleman, Tom Whitby, who is really an amazing blogger, an amazing educator. And he was tweeting some things about blogging, and I just started tweeting back to him and having this conversation, and he invited me to be a guest writer for Smart Blog on education about some benefits of blogging. So just because of those short tweets that I had with this person, who I don't know if I'll ever meet him, but he really inspired me and gave me an opportunity to challenge my own thinking and also challenge my skill in the area of writing and share my voice in regards to the positive effects of blogging for young children. So that was just one example. And I think about all the other people out there who are really, really willing to help each other out and support each other. I have to tell you, and even celebrate. I had someone ask me, but don't you think it's kind of like you're bragging? And I said, I don't think it is bragging. I think people really want to hear what you're doing, how it's working, how did you get started, and what have you learned in regards to how it's impacting your own professional development and work with students. So I think Twitter is just another one of those places where we can go just to be inspired daily. I mean, there are days when I'm on Twitter on and off throughout the day, and other days when I'm not on at all. And I think having a place like that that's really flexible is really appealing to me also, because as an educator, as everyone knows, we're really busy people most of the time, So that was just one perspective I had. I didn't know if Brandy or Peter, if you had a perspective or a story you'd like to share also.
Sharon, when you were saying that, the one thing, like major events like the World Cup, and I forget which earthquake or which natural disaster that came up, and the amount of people that were able to get connected through Twitter when their phones were going down for some reason, they were able to get information out to each other through Twitter. That was just it's mind shifting, and when you think about like the old system, you'd have to wait, like one of my social studies textbook, I also do 6th grade social studies, it's going on 8 to 10 years old, and we still use the textbook, but we do so much on the online communities, whether it's through Hangouts, what we're doing now, or just going on to find out who's the leading expert, and then reaching out to them, whether it's through a Hangout or through Twitter, to find out the latest and best information, because things are changing continuously. And that's why I have to say I love the NASA one. It's like the scientists discovered something that's not going to get in the textbook for maybe at the quickest 3 to 5 years. But if you're paying attention online, they found out, if they did something in the I forget what that atom testing thing in Europe, I forget what they use. If they found a new, how to break an atom, and then it's out there like 2 hours later, and it's just amazing to the expert, the instantaneous as opposed to waiting for a hard textbook.
Right.
And now you can get it right in your Flipboard account if you have that if you have that account going. How about you, Brandy? Do you have any?
For me, one thing I really like, and I've mentioned this before, is the back channeling that goes on at places. Last week I attended an educational technology conference in EDCO. It's for Colorado technologists, and it was so fun to follow the back channel on the Twitter feed because you couldn't be at everything, but you could, get the highlights and the points and the resources just from reading the Twitter feed that was going on. And of course, people were putting memes up there of funny things about the conference and, pictures. So there's that whole social aspect too, where to meet for dinner and stuff that was really, really fun to have on that back channel. And another thing for me that probably was the biggest change is I just, when I started hashtagging my blog post, I went from having maybe 20 people a day read my blog post to having like 200 people a day read my blog post overnight. And that to me really illustrated the power of Twitter and how many people are out there, actually looking at it and reading it and paying attention to it. So I've been much more enthusiastic about writing since that.
I can connect with you on that too, Brandy. I never really was into writing much, but now, here I am 4 blogs later, and I have had many different pieces published with different organizations. And I think this whole idea of, as you described, Twitter has really given me that perspective. It's helped me to feel safe and to feel okay about sharing my voice. And people are great. They're very respectful in terms of if they have questions, they want to challenge you, or if they're inspiring you, or if they want to try things. I think also I can connect with you with that whole idea about developing, there is this big audience out there. And that whole idea about with a big audience, you have a variety of perspectives. And I think that's really important in our work because Twitter, it's not like there's one right way to use it for yourself or with students. It's one of those platforms that's really flexible, I think. And I really like that. That's really appealing as well.
Well, it looks like we covered almost all the different aspects of Twitter, and we're going to be doing this broadcast again. It's at 7 p.m. If Brandy, if you could share out the resource document that we started the hangout with, where people could go to the tiny URL and add stuff. It's just tiny URL, the GPS network 6-23-14. We'll be adding stuff to it, and if people out there could add stuff to it, that would be great also. And we'll be doing this again at 7, and hopefully we're learning as we go along, so we'll just keep doing more and more broadcasts to bring what's the greatest and latest stuff out there in education technology onto online learning. So if everybody wants to have their final say goodbye, and then we'll end the broadcast there. Brandy?
All right, so thank you for joining us today, and tell your friends to join us at 7. Thanks.
Sharon?
Yeah, thanks everyone for being here. Thanks Peter and Brandy also. This was really a lot of fun, and I appreciate that we did this for our first webinar. I'm learning a lot as we go through this, and I also hope that people who are listening today will consider joining the NEA GPS network. As Peter and Brandy shared, all 3 of us are online facilitators. There's over 100 different groups to choose from with all different interests. So we hope you'll consider joining us there to have conversations too. Thank you.
And I know, Barb, you're here. Do you want to say hi and bye at the same time, I guess?
Sure, I can do that. I can do that. Yes, absolutely. So, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, Great, great. So I know it's delayed. So thank you all very, very much. And thanks to Sharon and Brandy and to Pete. We're very grateful for their expertise on the network. As you can see, they're extremely wonderful educators. And we're sure some of you watching this are as well. So we hope to learn your stories through the GPS network and hope you'll share with us what your great resources and your stories are as well, because that's part of what this network is all about. So thank you very much. Hi and bye.
All right. See you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.